But intimacy is really the connecting between two people in a very personal level. And as a result, it's causing people to seek out intimacy from others. People are I need somebody to make me feel loved, so I'm doing anything that I would feel loved. I'll serve somebody, I'll do anything I can just so somebody would say something good to me because I'm starving from intimacy. So as we define intimacy, oh, sorry, I didn't do that. I got it. Okay. As we define intimacy, I like to define intimacy as trust, which leads to vulnerability, which leads to intimacy. And this is so important. If you are afraid to be vulnerable with others, this is a big thing because a lot of people, they're afraid to be overly trusting because somebody might hurt me. And so a lot of people, because of, especially in this age, the experiences of your life as you've grown up, you've built up different wounds in your heart. Rejection from your friends, from family, hurts, broken hearts, from love relationships, right? And all of a sudden your walls keep going up. And so we don't allow ourselves to be vulnerable with others. Vulnerability is love. And if you can't be vulnerable, meaning if you can't be open and expose yourself to be loved, then chances are you're going to feel that you are deprived of something that you desperately need, but you're doing it to be safe. And so, once again, trust allows you to be vulnerable, which allows you to be intimate. And we're going to talk about different levels of intimacy. The kind of connection that two people can have when there are no barriers between them. When friends get together, and this is again, maybe on a friendship level, where they feel like, I don't need to hide from you. I'm not afraid that you're going to hurt me. I can share my vulnerabilities. I can share my struggles. I can share my brokenness. Why? Because I know that no matter what you're going to say, even if it's not what I want to hear, it's driven by love. And be careful because it's two-sided. If somebody is vulnerable and what you're saying is not driven by love, but is driven by wanting to stick it to them, or jealousy, or wanting to hurt them, that's it. The walls will go up. There'll be no trust. There'll be no openness. And there'll be no real connection. And I realize that there are so many people today that are longing to connect. And people come to me all the time and they say, Abuna, I just can't build friendships. And as I sit with them, I discover, because you have walls up to the ceiling, nobody can get in. So the most it's going to be is, hey, how are you? How's work? How are things? Good, good. Have a good day. And every week, hey, how are you? How's work? Hey, good, good. It's the same thing every day for the next 20 years. Why? Because I won't let anybody in past because I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want somebody to hurt me. And we all have this, but it's what they describe as a catch-22. If you keep yourself safe, you don't get love. And if you put yourself at risk, you might get hurt. And you have this battle within inside of you. You don't know what to do. And this is really something that's hurting us even as the body of believers. That everybody stays in their own shell to stay safe. All right. Now, intimacy is not needing to defend yourself against the other person, like I said, because you know they have your best interest at heart. I want you to think about somebody that you constantly get defensive with. Somebody that you constantly get defensive with and you put up the walls and you don't want to get into personal stuff and you kind of keep these walls up. Do you have a fear that this person doesn't have your best interest at heart? Maybe you say, no, I'm sure that my husband or my wife or my best friend or my sister or my parents, I'm sure they want the best for me. But because I've only experienced pain from people who don't want the best for me, I'm assuming that everyone does that. And I begin to project. And what happens is, I project these things even on God. And then I think that a lot of people say, I know once I commit my life to Jesus, He's going to get me, I'm going to be sick, maybe I'll get a disease, maybe, right? And people tell me, I don't want to get any closer to God lest he hurt me. Isn't it amazing that people can actually project their feelings, their wounds, on God himself? That if I know if I follow God anymore, I might get, cancer. Or God might take one of my loved ones to try me or to test me. Is that how we see God? Is this our view of God? Believe it or not, it is your view of God. Maybe not all of you, but some of us, we deal with this bad. I saw this good description. So I'm talking about a view. This is like a book review on a book called Intimacy, Anorexia. And I'm explaining what's in this book. And the author describes it as, he says, intimacy is into me see. Intimacy is into me see. Like seeing into me, seeing what's going on inside of me. How many of you don't like your real self? You don't like what's going on inside of you. There's a lot of things you don't like about yourself. You don't like your inside. There's things that you hate. And so, if it means that if I'm going to be intimate, people are going to see on the inside, maybe people won't love me if they see the real me. And so what happens? Once again, the walls go up. But I want you to think about, if you have a fear of connecting or you have a lack of connection with others, I want you to think for a second where it started. I want you to think about a friendship that you are trying to pull back a little bit. Maybe a spouse that just doesn't want to let their husband or wife in. Just play it safe, and we talk about the kids, and we pay the bills together, we'll take vacations, but you're not going to get in this thing inside of me that is so hurting. Can you think about when that took place? Maybe a parent really, really hurt you with one word. Maybe they said one thing that made you feel like, I can never be loved. Maybe it was you had a friend. In one day you find out they're moving to another state or country or whatever, and all of a sudden you felt like the sense of abandonment and rejection for somebody that you were so close to that I'm not building friendships again like that. Because the last time I made a friendship, they picked up and left. And so I want you to process, as I'm speaking, things have happened to all of us. But it doesn't mean that what happened to you when you were in 8th grade or 5 years old or even 15 years old is going to happen through everybody else that you meet, the people that love you. But now I want to make sure that we fix the expectation. Chances are, whoever you become intimate with, intimate emotionally, spiritually, in marriage physically, intellectually, whoever you become intimate with, chances are there's a really high percentage of them that are not going to be perfect. There's a very high percentage of them that all of them are not going to be perfect. Can they hurt you? Yeah. The key is how they hurt me, why they hurt me. Like, did they do it out of evil or did they do it just out of, it was a weakness. The person said a lie. The person maybe gossiped because they were going through something at the time that really hurt you. But at the same time, everybody is human. Everybody. You have hurt somebody. You've hurt a dear friend. You've hurt a sibling. You've hurt a spouse. You've hurt a best friend. You've hurt them. You were the cause of it. So just like you can justify why you've hurt others, we have to understand that chances are everybody that I'm intimate with, there's going to be some level of hurt. Now, we guard based on the amount of damage that I'm going to allow happen to me, okay? And we'll get into that. So true intimacy is nothing preventing a full understanding of the other person. And it's very, very scary if you don't want to look into yourself. Sometimes I get a lot of young people, they tell me, Abuna, I don't like to sit by myself. I say, why? I don't like to sit by myself. If I have a free moment, I'll call somebody, I'll hang out, I'll go shopping, I don't want to sit by myself. You know why? There's something that you're avoiding in there. There's something that if you can't sit by yourself for an evening, quiet, with the door, with the phone off, with the text messages away, and if you can't do that, you're afraid of something. And you have to know that. Because it's not good that you wouldn't know yourself, because if you don't know yourself, and if you don't want to look into yourself, chances are you're not letting anyone else look into you. And if you're guilty or afraid of what you know to be inside of you, it's hard to be intimate with another person if you're not willing to be intimate with yourself. Being intimate needs an intimacy with yourself. That's the first step. Being intimate with yourself. Acknowledging and accepting everything that's inside of me. I have an angry problem. I maybe am insecure. I feel like people wouldn't love me if they knew me. To get to know why I do what I do. Watch your behaviors in all of your friendships. When all of your friends make fun of you at the same thing, chances are there's something in there, like they make fun of you like lightheartedly, but they kind of mean it, but they don't want to hurt you, so they like joke around. That thing is something not to be offended by, something to be aware of. And the worst is when somebody can go throughout their whole life. They don't want to hear it, and I don't want to hear that, and you make fun of me and you hurt my feelings. Look, man, somebody's got to tell you. Somebody's got to tell you the truth. Otherwise, you're going to be never intimate. You'll never feel loved, which is going to prevent you from loving somebody else. All right. So I want to define anorexia. We know anorexia as a food disorder. People have heard of this concept of anorexia. It's a food disorder. It's used in reference to something called anorexia nervosa, which is an eating disorder where people starve themselves. You might find it sometimes in young ladies. They might starve themselves from food. Either they're resisting food and gaining weight to a level that they might become literally skin and bones. You can see a young lady, maybe she's like 90 pounds, and she says, I need to go on a diet. And you're like, why? How many of you guys have had a conversation with a young lady that says, why? You say, like, why do you want to go on a diet? I feel fat. Who told you you're fat? And you get this mindset where that's a type of, not in every case, but it's a type of anorexia. It's a disorder. Now, instead of denying food, what I'm talking about, you guys, this morning, is intimacy anorexics, which deny intimacy. First and foremost, for the married couples out there, it's denying sexual intimacy. And it's causing a lot of problems in our homes and our marriages. And not wanting to be sexually intimate with my spouse is a form of intimacy anorexia. Just like I was telling, a person can deprive themselves of food, they can also deprive themselves of intimacy and connecting. Like I said, for different fears and different reasons for that. But be careful. The intimacy anorexic will say, no, I have intimacy sometimes. And maybe they can speak to their spouse and say, don't you remember on Valentine's Day last year? Don't you remember on the birthday? Don't you remember? So an anorexic, in regards to a food disorder, doesn't never eat. They just eat way less food than they need to, right? They are starving themselves that when they do eat, obviously they would die, but they eat very little and not enough in which they need to eat. Isn't that correct? And so, how about when it comes to intimacy? No, I am intimate, it's just at an anorexic level. Is that it's just enough to survive. And maybe even a little less than enough to survive because the connection is dying. The connection is dying between a husband and a wife. Once again, anorexia isn't the complete absence of food or intimacy. It's the unhealthy limiting of something. All right. These are the tools that anorexics use. And we're going to describe some of the tools. The intimacy anorexic is armed with a set of powerful tools that they use to prevent others, including their spouses, from getting close to them. Not just marriage. And so young people, in your friendships, your close friendships, maybe even with your parents, maybe even with your spiritual father, you have this tool to prevent somebody close enough to you from getting close to you. First one is, being busy. First one is being busy. When someone is constantly busy with things, committees, work, programs, tasks, there's no time to get to know who they really are. Remember that person I told you that doesn't like to sit with themselves? Being busy. If you are too busy, and you're too busy in order to not connect with your friends. I have friends come to me and they say they're going crazy from their friend that is too busy. They're like, I'm in college, they're in college. Why are they busy 24/7? Like, I have a job, they have a job. I have 4 classes, they have 4 classes. Why is it that they are so busy in their life that they can't connect? And so people feel like they're being starved to connect with their loved ones, people that are dear friends of theirs, people that are maybe spouses. The person that always wants to be out and has meetings and going this, and I have an appointment, and I got to hang out, and then I get involved at church, and we use even like our spiritual activities to make us busy to starve the other person in my life, whoever they may be, from intimacy. Blame. When the other person is blamed, they may feel guilt or shame, and as a result, retreat, giving the anorexic more time to avoid intimacy. So when the anorexic blames somebody, the anorexic blames you for whatever it is that you're doing wrong, and they feel guilty, so they end up giving the anorexic, the person who is starving everybody of intimacy, their space, because I don't want to, you're complaining about me, and because you're complaining about me, I'm going to give you your space. And you allow the anorexic to keep on isolating and shutting off the people around them. Next, withholding love. Intimacy anorexics often don't like physical touch. They don't want to be so close that they might be seen. Now, it's not just everybody who doesn't like physical touch. Some people just don't like touch. Like, look, man, don't touch me. Like some people don't like touch. It's okay. That's not like a disorder. It's not a mental disorder. But if you're doing it, you don't want touch because you don't want this person to get any closer to me. If it's like, if I'm sitting next to my spouse and my husband puts his hand on my leg and I say, not right now. Why? Lest he think that I really want to be close to him. I'm going to say, not right now. He's like, look, I didn't need anything. We're just watching a movie and, trying to be, not right now. Hey, Lord, not right now. You just, and we just say, why? I don't want the person to come too close, lest they get too close to me. Those withholding love people are bad guys. Listen to this. Withholding praise. Withholding praise. Sorry. A little bit on the frozen side. Let's see if it works. Sorry. Okay. Can somebody click? Is it clicked already? Okay. Withholding praise. By withholding praise from someone, you're depriving them of the lifeblood they need to grow and to reach in. The result is that the intimacy anorexics can prevent their spouses from reaching in by only sharing negatives or nothing at all. So a person that will withhold giving praise to their spouse or to their friendships will prevent them from wanting to come, don't cross the people like boundaries very much. Some people love to preach about boundaries. Some of those people are intimacy anorexics, okay? Not every boundary has to be an iron gate that keeps out the whole Roman army. It has to be reasonable, okay? This concept of withholding praise. Lest you think I want to be closer to you, unless you think that I'm giving you the way in, I'm not going to make you feel good about yourself. Thank you. All right. The most common one found in marriage, withholding sex. This is a form of torture. It really is. I'm not joking, actually. You can have people that would deprive the spouse of sexual intimacy because whatever, and we're going to talk about reasons why somebody might do that, I just don't want to get close. I just don't want to feel connected. And so this is happening, and it's causing a lot of problems in marriages where one spouse will say, I'm tired today. You say, okay, ريحي النهارده. Like take a break today. Okay? Tomorrow is like, oh, I have a late meeting, and the next day is like, oh, the kids, they made me so mad, I'm just not in the mood. The fourth day, I'm on my period. Yes, salam. Like, بقالك 4 days كل شوية تقول لي كده, and then like 4 days, and all of a sudden now you're on your period. And this one is like she's on the period for 6 weeks, and you're like, what's wrong with you, man? Like it's everyone knows what's going on in my house. No. This is a big deal. We laugh about it. But the anorexic feels like, no, I don't want you to get close. Well, what's happening to the other person? What is the other person feeling? Rejected, deprived, unloved, starving for intimacy. And you say, oh, so does that mean I have to sleep with my husband because he's going to look outside? No, he's starving for love. And if you have made a clear commitment to not give him or her, it can go both ways, not give him or her love, we live by love, guys. We live by love. Now, there's a difference between this excuse of making the husband go out or the wife go out and start to be tempted sexually outside. It's a very small part of it. But what people might be looking for is just connection. My husband doesn't want to talk to me, doesn't want to share with me, doesn't tell me how beautiful I am, doesn't, show affection. Or my wife never wants me to touch her, or never wants me to and she's always shutting the walls. And, well, I need love. I want to share in love with somebody. I want to have connection with somebody. So what do? Maybe I'll find a friendship. Maybe it's a guy who's going to find another guy that's going to be best friends, and we're going to play basketball today, and then we're going to go to Tasbih on Saturday night, and all of a sudden, I'm neglecting my wife for my new best friend, and I'm getting a form of intimacy from him. He's sharing his heart, I'm sharing my heart, we're bonded, we're connected. It's not sexual love, it's not sexual intimacy, but there's intimacy because that person is starving. You say, well, I'm not like that. Okay, but do you want your spouse or your friend or your parent or your brother, whatever, to be starving for love? You say, I didn't realize that me saying no all these times is starving them and putting them in a dangerous position. I want you to listen to what St. Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 7. It says this. In 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 1. I'll read a few verses. Now concerning the things whereof you wrote unto me, it is good for a man not... Here, I'll read the New King James is better. Now concerning the things of which you wrote to me, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. Nevertheless, because of sexual immorality, let each man have his own wife, and let each woman have her own husband. Let the husband render to his wife the affection due her, and likewise also the wife to her husband. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. Why did God do that? Listen to how it goes the other way. Let the husband render to his wife the affection due her, and likewise also the wife to her own husband. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does, and likewise the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. Why does God give somebody else the authority over my body? Why does God give my spouse the authority? Lest I end up depriving, and listen to what the original Greek is. So the Bible says, do not deprive one another except with consent for a time. The word deprive, when I looked it up in Greek, is not deprive. It is do not rob or do not defraud one another. Do not steal, do not rob the other. And not just don't deprive them. No, that's not it. Depriving one another is robbing the other of something that they have, that is theirs. My wife's body is mine, and my body is my wife's own body. I cannot deprive in order to control and to manipulate. And this is causing so much damage in the home. Resentment, anger, frustration, rejection, looking outside. You say, Why are they looking outside? Mataban, of course, this is how men are. No, you're starving them. You're starving them of what is natural. If you're starving from food, I tell this sometimes to people when they come to my office, if you're starving from food, you haven't eaten in weeks, and you come to my office and I have a piece of rotten bread, spoiled bread in my office, and I say, excuse me, I need to just go to the bathroom, and I leave. You're going to take a bite out of that bread. You're going to eat what is rotten, not because you're a filthy animal, but because, what? You're starving. Be careful on the other side. Hold on, for all you women that are getting frustrated with me. Men, this is not a license to kill. Right? This is not like, I'm depriving. Like, this is the starvation. I'm robbed. I'm bankrupt. No. It doesn't mean that God hasn't given us a grace. We don't need to have sex. Like there are people who have lived their lives without having sex. We don't need it. Meaning we're not going to die without it. It would help us. It does help physically, and on several levels it helps the connection, it helps the spark in the marriage, it helps physically, it helps in so many levels. But it is not saying, see, I've been telling you, the reason why I do what I do is because you've been starving me. No, it's not a license to kill. Nobody has to have sex. God created us with His grace to not to have sex. For those of us that think, I remember I was in a theological discussion with a man of another religion, and he was saying, no, but God put in us a greater desire that we would need more wives. I said, yes, Salam. Like you need 4 wives and the rest of humanity needs 1. Like, I don't understand. They said, because our desire is more. I said, we're not animals here. We can starve the need, but to a healthy level. To a healthy level. Because we are meant to connect to each other in that way. Listen to this, withholding spiritually. Withholding spiritually. One of our most sensitive relationships is the relationship we have with our Creator. People who withhold this from their spouse because to reveal it makes them and the relationship vulnerable. Meaning, when you pray with your spouse, if you feel like it makes like the relationship vulnerable, so I don't like to pray with anybody. Sometimes people say, I don't like to pray out loud, I don't like to pray. You know why? Because you don't want to be vulnerable. You don't want to share what's going on inside. And I understand that everybody has their own personal relationship with God, but you're part of a body. And especially in a marriage, we're all guilty of this. We're all guilty of getting too busy, getting too distracted, not feeling it, not praying, and maybe you're doing this. Maybe you can identify that you are depriving a friend or a spouse or something of intimacy spiritually. By the way, if you are not connecting emotionally or physically, the spark has gone down, spiritual intimacy will lift up those other two. So if 2 people are praying together and pursuing God together and serving one another and serving God more and loving the Lord, and that'll spark up what? The emotional intimacy. You'll feel like a deeper connection with them, and the physical intimacy. Nothing's more attractive than a woman who loves the Lord, or a man who gives his life to Christ. That is very, very attractive. That should spark up the other intimacy when somebody is pursuing Christ. Criticism. Humans who don't like constant criticism, particularly when it's not constructive. An anorexic will use criticism to keep at bay. If I criticize you enough, you'll be so frustrated with me, you'll never ask me for anything. Be careful if you're doing that. And you're wondering why your spouse or your friend doesn't want to get close to you. You're criticizing too much. Everything you say is critical or negative. Anger. Some use their anger to scare off others. If you're afraid of their anger, then you won't want to be near them. So an angry person will make you stay a few steps back, not want to like talk to me. You know that I'll blow up. You know I'm one of those time bombs. And so you just keep your distance. It works. And so if you find yourself angry, you're doing the same thing. Silence. The old saying, it takes 2 to tango, is even more true of conversations. A person who will avoid even answering questions that might lead to an intimate exchange. Imagine your friend or your partner they want to have a conversation with you, and you're just not connected. You're distracted. You don't care. You are depriving the other of intimacy. They want to connect with you. And then you wonder, you say, like, you're not letting me be connected to you in any way. Neither physically, neither spiritually, not intellectually, and sharing. How was your day at work? Oh, it was okay. Okay, but it's been like 6 years and I've heard anything. Like, do you even work? Do you have a job? I want to know. I want to connect with you. Controlling money. We'll go through them a little bit quicker. Required mind reading. The intimacy anorexic will often require that their spouse read their mind as to what they want. This is every male and female relationship, okay? How many of us husbands feel like you need like somebody that can call on the spirits to try to figure out what is going on in your wife's mind? You have no clue, and you're doing mind reading. Why? Because the person doesn't want to just say the one clue that would really make everything so clear as to why you're upset at me. This mind reading is a type of starving the other. Victimhood. The anorexic loves to play the role of victim. No, nobody loves me. I know I'm the worst. Nobody wants to care about me. And so what happens? It brings the spouse into the position of trying to come alongside and support them. It's a distraction from some other type of connection. All right. Causes of the intimacy anorexic. Maybe somebody went through some type of sexual trauma at some point in their life. And it doesn't have to be that they were abused or whatever. But they saw sexuality in such a distorted view that they wanted to have nothing to do with it. Like, people are so perverted in their thinking, and they see sex as something so filthy that I'm traumatized by knowing how people think of it, that I'm sexually traumatized. And so this is why maybe I'm starving somebody else. It's not an excuse, but it needs healing. Or opposite gender parent issues. So if you are a male, maybe you had issues with your mother. Or you are a female and you had issues with your father. And this has created some type of reason why you deprive the other. Or sexual addiction, pornography and the like, and addiction to masturbation and stuff like that. Fears of the intimacy anorexic. These are so important. Why is the person intimately anorexic? They don't feel safe. There's a lack of safety. So if you're dealing with an anorexic friendship or whatever, you need to give them this feeling of trust. I can trust you. I need to feel that I can trust you, that you are committed to doing what we both see as right before God and before each other. So if you are frustrated with your intimacy anorexic, they need to feel safety. They don't feel safe. Or they have hidden flaws that they don't want to show. They also fear loss of control. Some people are control freaks. And so I don't want to lose control in my life by opening myself up to you. Like I have my own thing going, especially as people get older and you become more professional and independent. Like I have my own thing going. I don't need anybody to come and turn things up. I have my own OCD thing that going on in my house. Like, it's fine, leave me alone. No. Chances are you're afraid that you're going to lose control. Or acknowledging your own sexuality. Your own either sexual desires. Maybe you're afraid to acknowledge your own sexuality and need for sexuality. Or acknowledging, for some people, even their gender. Acknowledging just their own gender roles and needs. All right. The intimacy of sex. We are chemically driven, created by God to desire sex, both before the event, through the use of different hormones, and after the event with a chemical reward system. The reward system, listen to all of these different hormones that God has created inside of you. Oxytocin, known as the cuddle hormone. It increases bonding and relaxation. This is in your brain. Endorphins. This is the natural high that comes from sex. Dopamine, engagement and focus are the effects of dopamine. So if you have this release of dopamine, you can engage and focus. Serotonin, this is a mood regulation chemical that is at the heart of most antidepressant medicines that calms you down. Imagine God put all these in your brain. But thank God this happened just by accident, right? Look at this. Look at how God intricately is trying to give you hormones in your brain for intimacy, for connecting, for focusing, for feeling the pleasure, for feeling the relaxation, for feeling the enjoyment. By God, designed by God. All right. Something that you do is starve the dog. You wonder, why won't they love me? Why won't they love me? I read this little example in the book. It was nice. It says, how do you eat an elephant? The predictable answer is one bite at a time. And then comes the question, well, how do you starve a dog? The implication here is not the literal starving of the dog, but rather, how do you create a mean and angry dog who will bite at the smallest provocation? The answer is to starve them. You have to feed them something or they'll die, and that's not the point. The point is to create a mean and angry dog, so you feed them, but always just a little bit too little. You never give them enough to feel satisfied or okay. The resulting dog will be conditioned into a mean and angry animal. The sad part is that this is the same process through which intimacy anorexics train their spouses. They teach them to always be hungry, just on the edge of exploding, and spouses sometimes choose to get fed other places, leading to inappropriate relationships. So the intimacy anorexic makes the other person look like a monster. They're so angry. Why are you angry all the time? Why are you always fighting? Because you're starving them. And they become the bad guy. Be careful of this sin. So today, like what we're doing is we are just describing what this is. Next week, we're going to talk about the healing. Withholding. Be careful if you are withholding yourself from others. We talked about how Christ emptied himself for others. First thing I want you to do, I'm going to end with this. You need to find yourself. Find yourself in the story as an anorexic or the spouse of an anorexic. You have to start to discover yourself and be aware whether you are starving others of intimacy and connecting with you on any level, spiritually, physically, intellectually, conversationally, and emotionally. Be careful, because it's causing a lot of pain in other people's lives. Glory be to God forever. Amen. Let's stand up and pray.